Captain Han Wu stood on the bridge of the spaceship Unity's Voice, watching the alien planet grow larger on the main screen. His hands were steady, but his heart beat faster than usual. Today would change everything for humanity. After 3 years of careful messages sent through space, the Valtheran Empire had finally agreed to meet with humans face-to-face. The Valtherans controlled 17 star systems. They were old, powerful, and had never made friends with any species they considered weak. Most alien races feared them. The few who had tried to make contact had been turned away or simply ignored, but somehow humanity had caught their attention. Han Wu looked around the bridge at his team. Dr. Kim Nari sat at her workstation, checking her translation device for the 100th time that day. She had spent 3 years building it, testing it on every language on Earth and 3 alien languages they had learned from other species. The device could read brain patterns, listen to voices, and watch body movements to translate any language perfectly. At least that was the plan. Engineer Park Jin worked at his control panel, monitoring all the ship's systems. He was young but skilled, and Han Wu trusted him completely. Park Jin had noticed some small problems with the translator's computer systems earlier, but nothing seemed serious. Just normal computer fluctuations that happened on long space trips. Ambassador Lee Yuna stood near the captain's chair, reading over her notes one more time. She would be the first human to speak to the Valtheran Queen. The words she would say had been chosen very carefully. Dr. Kim Nari had spent months learning about Valtheran culture, studying their language patterns, and creating the perfect greeting. "Captain," Park Jin called out, "we're getting a signal from the Valtheran ship." On the screen, a massive ship appeared. It was 10 times bigger than Unity's Voice, made of what looked like black crystal that seemed to absorb light. Strange. Symbols glowed along its sides in colors that human eyes could barely see. This was the Eternal Dominion, the personal ship of Queen Velthis. "They're giving us permission to dock," Park Jin reported. "But Captain, I'm still seeing those weird readings from the translation device. Maybe we should delay and fix it first." "Doctor," Kim Nari turned around quickly. "We can't delay. It took 2 years just to get this meeting. If we ask to wait, they might think we're not serious. The device is working fine. Those readings are just normal computer noise." Han Wu made the decision that would change everything. "We go ahead, as planned. This meeting is too important to risk." As Unity's Voice moved closer to the alien ship, the crew could see other Valtharan ships in the distance. Dozens of them, all armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The message was clear. Humanity was here by invitation, but they were also surrounded. "Look at that," whispered Lee Yuna, staring at the alien ships. "Each one could probably destroy our entire fleet back home." "That's why we're here talking instead of fighting," Han Wu replied. "Intelligence over force. That's always been humanity's best weapon." The docking process took an hour. Valtharan technology was far ahead of human science, and their docking systems were different from anything humans had seen before. But Park Jin managed to connect the ship safely. Before leaving Unity's Voice, the team did final checks on all their equipment. The translation device was a small box that Dr. Kim Nari would carry. It would listen to everything said and project translations into the air as words that everyone could see and hear. "Remember the plan," Han Wu told his team. "Ambassador, Lee speaks first with the formal greeting. I handle any military questions. Dr. Kim handles all technical issues. Park Jin stays with the ship and monitors everything. We stick together, we stay calm, and we make history." Dr. Kim Nari picked up the translation device. For just a moment, she saw an error message flash on its screen, but it disappeared so quickly she almost missed it. The device's status showed green across all systems. She decided the message must have been a glitch. "Translation device is ready," she reported. "All systems working perfectly." The team put on their best formal uniforms and walked to the airlock. Through the small window, they could see the Valtharan ship's docking bay. It was huge, carved from the same black crystal as the rest of the ship. Strange lights moved across the walls in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Last chance to turn back," Han Wu joked, trying to ease the tension. "No way. Lee Yuna replied. I've been practicing that greeting for months. I could say it in my sleep. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The air that flowed in was breathable but smelled different, like ozone and something sweet that humans had no name for. The gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal. 6 Valthuran guards waited for them. They were tall, at least 9 feet each, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer like water. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their eyes were larger than human eyes, colored deep purple. Each guard carried weapons that hummed with energy. The guards said nothing but gestured for the humans to follow. They walked through corridors carved from crystal, past rooms filled with technology that looked more like art than machines. Other Valthurans stopped their work to stare at the humans. Some seemed curious, others looked hostile. Stay calm, Hanwu whispered to his team. Remember, we're guests here. The walk to the throne room took 20 minutes. The Valthuran ship was enormous, more like a flying city than a spacecraft. They passed gardens with plants that glowed in the dark, laboratories with experiments that defied human understanding, of physics and training rooms where Valthuran warriors practiced with weapons that could cut through solid steel. Finally, they reached 2 massive doors covered in carvings that told the history of the Valthuran Empire. The doors were 30 feet tall and looked like they weighed tons, but they opened silently at their approach. The throne room beyond was breathtaking. The ceiling was a dome of clear crystal that showed the stars outside. The walls were covered, in murals showing Valthuran victories over dozens of alien species. And at the far end, on a throne carved from a single piece of black diamond, sat Queen Velthis. She was 12 feet tall even while sitting, her skin a deeper blue than her. Guards with markings that glowed silver across her face and arms. Her 4 eyes watched the humans approach, and her 4 hands rested on the arms of her throne, each finger ending in claws that could tear through metal. The room fell silent as the human delegation approached. This was the moment they had prepared for, dreamed of, and feared. First contact with one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Dr. Kim Nari activated the translation device. Ambassador Lee Yuna stepped forward, took a deep breath, and prepared to make the most important speech in human history. None of them noticed the tiny red warning light blinking inside the translation device. Ambassador Lee Yuna stepped forward toward the massive throne. The crystal floor beneath her feet seemed to glow with each step. Around the throne room, dozens of Valthuran nobles watched in silence. Their purple eyes tracked every movement the humans made. Queen Velthis sat perfectly still on her diamond throne. Her 4 eyes studied the small human delegation. She had ruled the Valthuran Empire for over 200 years, and in that time, she had seen many alien species try to gain her favor. Most had failed before they even spoke. These humans looked different, though. Smaller and weaker than most species, but something in their posture suggested they were not easily frightened. Dr. Kim Nari held the translation device carefully in both hands. She had tested it thousands of times, but this was the most important moment of her career. Everything had to work perfectly. The device hummed softly, its sensors reading the brain patterns of everyone in the room, analyzing their language centers, preparing to translate between human and Valthuran speech. Inside the device, quantum processors worked at incredible speed. But something was wrong. The long space journey had damaged some of the delicate circuits. Error cascades were building up in the translation matrix, but the device's safety systems were not reporting the problems correctly. The status lights showed green, but deep inside the machine, the language algorithms were breaking down. Ambassador Lee Yuna bowed deeply, the way Dr. Kim Nari had taught her. In human culture, this showed respect and peaceful intentions. She had practiced this moment hundreds of times during the long journey to Valthuran space. Your Radiance, she began, her voice clear and strong. We come in humble respect, offering the friendship of our young species to your ancient wisdom. The translation device picked up her words and her brain patterns. It analyzed her slightly nervous heartbeat, her formal posture, her careful pronunciation. But the damaged circuits processed everything wrong. Her nervousness registered as aggression. Her formal bow looked like a dominance display to the broken sensors, Her humble words got twisted by the failing algorithms. What came out of the device in perfect Veltheran language was completely different. Your weakness, we come to conquer, offering the submission of your pathetic species to be devoured by our ancient hunger. The effect was immediate and terrible. Queen Velthis's 4 eyes widened in shock, then narrowed to dangerous slits. Her chromatophores, the color-changing cells under her skin, shifted from calm blue to deep crimson. In Veltheran culture, this color meant rage, insult, and the promise of violence. The silence in the throne room was deafening. Every Veltheran noble, guard, and servant stopped moving. In 200 years of rule, no one had ever dared speak to Queen Velthis with such disrespect. The insult was so extreme that by Veltheran law it could only mean one thing. The humans had come to declare war. Captain Han Wu felt his blood turn cold. He did not understand Veltheran language, but he had spent years studying alien body, language, and behavior. The Queen's posture had changed from curious to hostile in seconds. Her guards were reaching for their weapons. Something had gone very, very wrong. "Dr. Kim," he whispered urgently. "What did the translator say?" Dr. Kim Nari stared at her device in horror. The status screen still showed green, but she could see the Queen's reaction. She quickly accessed the device's memory to see what translation it had produced. When she read it, her face went white with fear. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." Queen Velthis rose from her throne. At her full height, she was terrifying to look at. Her 4 hands curled into claws, and when she spoke, her voice echoed through the crystal chamber like thunder. "You dare come into my presence with such words?" she roared in Veltheran. "You insects think you can threaten the eternal empire? You believe your tiny species can devour us?" The translation device, still malfunctioning, translated her words back to the humans as, "You honor us with such poetry? You angels think you can join the eternal empire? You believe your noble species can aid us?" Ambassador Li Yuna looked confused. The Queen sounded angry, but the translation made it seem like she was pleased. Li Yuna tried to continue with her prepared speech. "Great Queen, we seek only peace and understanding between our peoples," she said. The broken device translated this as, "Weak Queen, we seek only war and domination over your peoples." Queen Velthis's rage grew even greater. Her chromatophores shifted to a deeper red that her guards had rarely seen. This was beyond insult now. This was a declaration of war from a species that should have been begging for mercy. "Guards," she commanded. "Prepare for execution." 20 Veltheran warriors stepped forward, their plasma weapons charging with deadly energy. The weapons glowed like small suns, each one capable of turning a human to ash in seconds. Captain Han Wu finally understood what was happening. The translation device had malfunctioned. They had insulted the Queen without meaning to, and now they were about to die for it. But Han Wu had not survived 20 years in space by giving up when things looked impossible. "Everyone freeze," he ordered his team quietly. "Do not make any sudden moves. Dr. Kim, can you fix the device?" "I'm trying," she whispered, her fingers flying over the device's controls. "The quantum processors are cascading. Everything is backwards. I need time to reset the core matrix." "We might not have time," Han Wu replied. Watching the advancing guards, Park Jin, who had been silent until now, stepped forward slightly. As an engineer, he understood machines better than anyone on the team. "Dr. Kim, try the emergency protocol. Reset everything to basic mode." Queen Velthis pointed one of her 4 hands at the humans. In Valtharan culture, this was the gesture that condemned prisoners to death. "By the ancient laws of our empire," she declared, "those who insult the crown with such vile words must face immediate execution." "You have shamed not only me, but all Valtharans who witnessed your arrogance," the malfunctioning translator told the humans. "By the ancient laws of our empire, those who honor the crown with such beautiful words must face immediate celebration. You have pleased not only me, but all Veltharans who witnessed your wisdom." Ambassador Li Yuna was completely lost now. Nothing made sense. The Queen looked furious, but the translator said she was happy. The guards had weapons pointed at them, but according to the device, this was supposed to be a celebration. Dr. Kim Nari worked desperately on the device. She found the source of the problem, a quantum cascade failure that had reversed the entire translation matrix. Everything was being translated as its opposite. Every word of respect had become an insult. Every peaceful gesture had become a threat. "I can fix it," she whispered to Captain Hanwoo, "but I need at least 2 minutes to restart the core systems." "We don't have 2 minutes," Hanwoo replied, watching the guards advance. The plasma weapons were fully charged now. Queen Velthus raised her hand, ready to give the final command for execution. In her mind, these humans had committed the worst possible crime, insulting her in front of her entire court. There could be only one response, but Captain Hanwoo had an idea. It was desperate and dangerous, but it was their only chance. He had spent years studying different alien cultures, and he knew that most intelligent species understood certain universal concepts: honor, respect, and most importantly, the difference between intentional insults and accidents. He just had to find a way to communicate that difference without using words. Hanwoo took a deep breath and made the decision that would either save his team or get them all killed. He stepped forward past Ambassador Lee Yuna directly toward the Queen and her guards. "Wait," he said loudly, hoping against hope that his plan would work. Queen Velthus paused, her hand still raised. She was curious to hear what final words this arrogant human would speak before dying. The broken translation device turned Hanwoo's word into Valthuran as attack. 20 plasma weapons swung toward Captain Hanwoo, ready to fire. Captain Hanwoo saw the plasma weapons aimed at his chest, but he did not run or beg for mercy. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone in the throne room, including his own team. He dropped to one knee and began removing his military insignia from his uniform. Queen Velthus had seen many alien species face death. Some begged, some fought, some tried to bargain. But she had never seen anyone respond to mortal danger by removing their symbols of rank and placing them on the floor. This was not the behavior of someone trying to threaten her empire. Hanwoo placed his captain's bars, his service medals, and his command badge on the crystal floor in front of him. Then he looked directly at the Queen and began speaking slowly and clearly, hoping that Dr. Kim Na-ri could find a way to make the translation device work properly. "There has been an error in our communication device," he said, gesturing toward the translation unit that Dr. Kim Na-ri held. "We ask for the right to prove our true intentions through actions, not words." Dr. Kim Na-ri was working frantically on her device, sweat running down her face despite the cool air in the throne room. She had found the cascade failure and was trying to restart the quantum processors without losing all the language data. Her fingers flew over the control screen as she engaged the emergency protocol that Park Jin had suggested. The device flickered, sparked, and then switched to a much simpler translation mode. This basic system could only handle simple concepts and had no ability to read emotions or body language, but it was accurate for basic words. Hanwoo's message came through in rough but understandable Valthuran. "Machine broken. We show truth. Give chance." Queen Velthus tilted her massive head, studying the human who knelt before her. The words were simple and direct, completely different from the insulting speech that had come before, and his actions were even more interesting. By removing his insignia, he was showing that he understood the concept of rank and respect. By kneeling, he was demonstrating submission, not dominance. Park Jin saw that the Queen was listening, so he decided to take a risk. As an engineer, he understood that sometimes the best way to explain a problem was to show it physically. He stepped forward, keeping his movements slow and obvious, and held out his hands toward Dr. Kim Na-ri. "May I?" he asked quietly. She handed him the translation device, understanding what he planned to do. Park Jin turned toward the Queen and her guards, then deliberately opened the device's outer casing. Inside, they could all see the sparking, damaged circuits and the error lights flashing red. Park Jin removed one of the failed quantum processors and held it up so everyone could see the burn marks on its surface. Then he pointed to the device, then to himself. and made the universal gesture for broken by holding his hands apart and shaking his head. This was a language that needed no translation. Technology failed sometimes. Every intelligent species in the galaxy understood this basic fact. The Queen's purple eyes followed Park Jin's demonstration, and for the first time since the humans had entered her throne room, her chromatophores began to shift away from the deep red of rage. Ambassador Lee Yuna was watching the Queen carefully, trying to understand what had gone wrong and how to fix it. She had studied Valtharan culture for months, and she remembered reading about their formal greeting rituals. The Queen's courtiers had been making specific hand gestures and body movements when the humans entered. Lee Yuna had been too nervous to pay attention then, but now she tried to remember the patterns. Slowly, carefully, she began to copy the movements she had seen the Valtharan nobles making. Her four-limbed human body could not match the four-armed Valtharan gestures exactly, but she did her best to approximate them. She held her arms out in what she hoped was a gesture of respect, then brought them to her chest and bowed deeply. Her attempt was clumsy and obviously unpracticed, but it was clearly sincere. She was trying to communicate in the Valtharan way, using their customs instead of human ones. Queen Velthis recognized the gesture, even though it was performed badly. This human female was showing that she understood the difference between cultures and was willing to learn. The Queen looked at the three humans before her. One had shown respect by removing his symbols of authority. Another had demonstrated the truth about their broken machine. The third was trying to speak in Valtharan body language despite having no training. These were not the actions of arrogant conquerors who had come to insult her. But Queen Velthis had not ruled the Valtharan Empire for 200 years by being easily fooled. Many species had tried to trick her with false shows of respect, only to betray her trust later. She needed to know if these humans were genuine or just clever actors. She spoke to her guards in rapid Valtharan, giving them new orders. The simple translation device could only catch a few words: test, wisdom, ancient trial, understanding. The guards lowered their weapons but did not put them away. Instead, they formed a circle around the humans, not threatening them but clearly keeping them contained. Queen Velthis rose from her throne and walked down the steps toward the human delegation. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her skin seemed to glow with inner light, and her four eyes could look in different directions at once, studying each human individually while also watching them as a group. When she spoke, her voice was no longer filled with rage, but it was still dangerous. The translation device caught the basic meaning of her words. Humans, you claim machine error, prove, trial, ancient way, test truth, live or die. Captain Hanwu understood. The Queen was offering them some kind of test or trial instead of immediate execution. It was more than they could have hoped for after the disaster with the translation device. We accept, he said simply. Dr. Kim Nari was still working on the translation device, but she had managed to stabilize the basic functions. She could provide simple translations now, though nothing as sophisticated as what she had originally planned. Queen Velthis nodded slowly. The trial of understanding, she said, and the device translated it properly this time. 3 tests: adaptability, honor, wisdom, no words allowed, actions only. Pass all 3, and we will believe your machine was broken. Fail any test, and you die as insult givers deserve. The Queen gestured to her guards, who began moving toward the exits of the throne room. It was clear that the humans were expected to follow. What kind of trial? Ambassador Lee Yuna asked, but the Queen did not answer. She was already walking toward a side exit, her long strides forcing the humans to hurry to keep up. As they left the throne room, Park Jin whispered to his teammates, "At least we're not being executed right now." "Yet," Captain Hanwu replied, grimly. "We still have to pass 3 tests that were designed for a species with 4 arms, different eyesight, and completely different ways of thinking." Dr. Kim Nari clutched the partially repaired translation device. "I'll keep working on this while we walk. Maybe I can get full functions back online before we need it." They followed the queen and her guards through corridors that seemed to change as they walked. The walls shifted from crystal to metal to something that looked like living tissue. The Viltharan ship was unlike anything humans had ever built, and the humans realized they were about to be tested in an environment designed for beings very different from themselves. But as they walked, something interesting happened. Instead of feeling defeated, the human team began to feel determined. This was what humans did best: adapt to impossible situations and find ways to succeed against overwhelming odds. Captain Han Wu straightened his shoulders. Ambassador Li. Yuna began observing everything around them, learning as much as she could about Veltharan architecture and design. Park Jin studied the technology they passed, understanding how alien engineering worked. Dr. Kim Nari continued fixing their translation device while also analyzing the language patterns she heard from the guards. Queen Velthis noticed this change in the humans' behavior. Instead of being frightened by the trial ahead, they seemed to be preparing for it. They were studying their environment, supporting each other, and adapting to their situation. These were not typical responses from species facing the trial of understanding. Most aliens who took the trial either panicked or tried to negotiate for easier tests. These humans were doing something she had rarely seen. They were treating an impossible challenge as a problem to be solved. Perhaps these creatures were more interesting than she had first thought. The first test chamber was enormous. The walls curved up and away into darkness, and the floor was covered with a maze made of metal and crystal that glowed with different colors. Queen Velthis stood at the entrance with her guards watching as the humans examined their challenge. First test, the queen announced through the basic translation device. Adaptability, navigate maze, reach center. Maze designed for Veltharan bodies. You have different bodies. Adapt or fail. The maze was clearly built for beings with 4 arms and eyes that could see different types of light than human eyes. There were handholds that required 4 hands to use at once, bridges that needed to be crossed in ways that human bodies were not designed for, and pathways that seemed to disappear when viewed with normal human vision. Captain Han Wu looked at his team. Ideas? Park Jin was already studying the maze's structure with his engineer's mind. Look at the patterns in the metal, he said. Those aren't random. There are magnetic fields running through the pathways. If we can follow the magnetic patterns instead of trying to use the visual cues, we might be able to find our way. Dr. Kim Nari pulled a small device from her equipment pack. It was designed to detect electrical fields for her translation work, but it could also pick up magnetic patterns. This might help us track the magnetic paths Park Jin is talking about. Ambassador Li Yuna studied the other humans carefully. We're going to need to work as a team. Where Veltharans use 4 arms, we can use 4 people working together. They entered the maze as a group. When they reached the first barrier that required 4 hands to operate, Captain Han Wu and Li, Yuna each used both hands while Park Jin and Dr. Kim Nari provided balance and support. When they found a bridge too narrow for human balance, they formed a human chain with each person holding on to the next. Queen Velthis watched from above, her 4 eyes tracking their progress. She had seen hundreds of species attempt this maze over the years. Most tried to solve it the Veltharan way and failed because they did not have the right body type. These humans were doing something different. Instead of trying to be like Veltharans, they were using their own abilities in new ways. The humans reached a section of the maze where the path seemed to vanish completely. To Veltharan eyes, which could see infrared light, the path was clearly marked. But human eyes could not see these markings. Wait, Dr. Kim Nari said, checking her magnetic detector. The magnetic field continues even where we can't see a path. I think there are invisible bridges here. Park Jin carefully tested the empty air in front of them with his foot. His boot touched something solid, even though nothing was visible. There's a bridge here, we just can't see it. One by one, the humans crossed the invisible bridge, holding on to each other for safety. They moved slowly and carefully, trusting their instruments and their teamwork more than their eyes. When they reached the center of the maze, they found a simple crystal platform. They had completed the first test. Queen Velthis nodded approvingly. First test passed. You adapted to environment designed for different species. You used cooperation where we use individual ability. Interesting approach. The second test chamber was designed to look like a battlefield. Valtheran guards wearing training armor stood ready with practice weapons. The Queen explained the rules through the translation device. Second test. Honor. Show personal sacrifice for group benefit. Prove you understand honor means protecting others, not just winning fights. Captain Hanwoo stepped forward immediately. As the team leader and the one with military experience, he felt responsible for protecting his people. But before he could speak, Ambassador Lee Yuna moved past him. "Wait," she said. "This isn't about fighting, is it? You said honor means protecting others. What if there's a way to protect everyone without anyone getting hurt?" The Veltharan guards advanced with their practice weapons raised. In traditional Veltharan culture, honor was proven by fighting bravely, even against impossible odds. Most species who took this test tried to fight and were defeated, but showed honor in their courage. Lee Yuna did something completely unexpected. Instead of preparing to fight or choosing who would sacrifice themselves, she stepped between the guards and her teammates and began speaking to the guards in the basic Veltharan she had been learning. Her pronunciation was terrible, and her grammar was wrong, but her meaning was clear. She was trying to negotiate. She was asking the guards why they wanted to fight, whether there was another way to solve the problem, and what would happen if nobody fought at all. The guards stopped advancing, confused. In hundreds of years of trials, no one had ever tried to talk their way out of the honor test. Combat was expected. Negotiation was not part of the traditional trial. Queen Velthus leaned forward with interest. This human female had found a third option that was not fighting or surrendering. She was trying to prevent the battle entirely. "What are you doing?" one of the guards asked in Veltharan. Lee Yuna's broken Veltharan came out slowly, asking, "Why fight unnecessary? All people stay safe better than some people hurt, yes?" Dr. Kim Nari worked quickly to improve the translation device's function so she could help Lee Yuna communicate better. "She's saying that keeping everyone safe is better than having some people get hurt," she translated. The Queen stood up from her observation platform. This was unprecedented. The human was trying to redefine what honor meant. Instead of accepting that sacrifice was necessary, she was questioning whether the situation required sacrifice at all. "In Veltharan culture," the Queen said slowly, "honor means courage in battle and willingness to die for others." Lee Yuna nodded respectfully, then replied through the improved translation device. "In human culture, the highest honor is finding ways to protect everyone so that no one has to die. We believe that saving all lives shows more courage than sacrificing some lives." The Veltharan guards looked at each other, then at their queen. They had never encountered this philosophy before. Queen Velthus considered carefully. The trial was designed to test whether aliens understood concepts that Veltharans valued. But this human was showing her a different way to think about those same concepts. Instead of accepting Veltharan definitions, she was offering human perspectives. Second test. Modified. The Queen finally announced. "You have shown that your species values protecting all life over individual glory. This is a form of honor we had not considered." Test passed. The third test chamber was the most complex yet. It contained a three-dimensional puzzle that floated in the air made of light and energy. Mathematical equations in Veltharan symbols covered the walls. Third test, wisdom. This puzzle has challenged Veltharan scholars for decades. It requires understanding how different minds value different solutions. Solve it if you can. Dr. Kim Nari studied the puzzle and the equations. Her background in xenolinguistics had taught her to think about how different species processed information differently. The problem was not just mathematical, it was cultural. "This isn't just about numbers," she said after several minutes. "Look at the symbols. They're not just mathematical. They represent concepts that matter to different species." Park Jin used his engineering skills to analyze the puzzle's structure. "It's a resource allocation problem. There are different materials and different needs, but the current solution only considers what Veltharans would want. Captain Han Wu and Ambassador Li Yuna helped by asking questions that Dr. Kim Nari needed to consider. What would other species value? How would different cultures approach the problem? What solutions had never been tried because Veltharans assumed other species were not important? Dr. Kim Nari began rearranging the energy puzzle, creating a solution that accounted for the needs and values of species the Veltharans had never considered equal to themselves. Instead of maximizing efficiency for one dominant species, her solution created balance for multiple different species working together. The puzzle began to glow brighter as her solution took shape. When she finished, the entire chamber filled with light, and the puzzle transformed into a complex pattern that was beautiful to look at from any angle. Queen Velthis stared at the solution in amazement. Her scholars had been trying to solve this puzzle for decades by making it work better for Veltharans. This human had solved it by making it work for everyone. Third test passed, she announced, but her voice was different now. There was respect in it, and something that might have been wonder. As the humans were escorted back toward the throne room, Queen Velthis walked beside them instead of ahead of them. The trial of understanding was complete, but the Queen realized that she had learned as much from the humans as they had proven about themselves. These small, seemingly weak creatures had shown her ways of thinking that her ancient, powerful empire had never considered. They had adapted to impossible challenges, redefined what honor meant, and solved problems by thinking about species other than themselves. For the first time in 200 years of rule, Queen Velthis found herself curious to learn more about another species rather than simply judging whether they were worthy of her attention. But she had one more test in mind, one that would determine not just whether humans could be allies, but whether they deserved to survive at all. Queen Velthis led the humans to her private chambers instead of back to the throne room. The space was smaller than the Grand Hall, but somehow more impressive. The walls were covered with star maps showing the entire Veltharan Empire, and holographic displays showed fleets of ships moving through space in real time. "Sit," the Queen commanded, gesturing to chairs that adjusted themselves to fit human bodies. Dr. Kim Nari had finally managed to repair the translation device completely, so communication was no longer a problem. The Queen studied each human carefully before speaking. "You have passed the trial of understanding. This means you are not the arrogant conquerors your broken machine made you appear to be. But I have not told you why this meeting was truly arranged." Captain Han Wu felt a chill of worry. "Your Majesty?" "Queen." Velthis activated one of her holographic displays. The image showed a vast swarm of dark ships moving through space like a cloud of locusts. Each ship was organic-looking, made of twisted metal and what appeared to be living tissue. There were thousands of them, the devourer swarm, the Queen said grimly. They consume entire civilizations. They attacked the edge of our empire 6 months ago. We have lost 3 colony worlds and 17 battle fleets trying to stop them. The humans stared at the display in horror. The ships looked like nightmares made real, and there were so many of them that they seemed to blot out the stars. "We have fought them with everything we have," the Queen continued. "Our most advanced weapons, our best strategies, our bravest warriors. Nothing works. They adapt to every attack we make. They learn from every battle. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They exist only to consume." Ambassador Li Yuna leaned forward. "What does this have to do with humanity?" The Queen's expression was grim. "The Veltharan Empire has ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. We have always been strong enough to protect ourselves and the species under our rule. But we are failing against the swarm. For the first time in our history, we need help." She turned to look directly at Captain Han Wu. "Your species is young and weak. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your military is tiny. But in the past 3 hours you have shown me ways of thinking that my empire never considered. You have solved problems by working together instead of dominating others. You have found solutions by thinking about what others need, instead of just what you want." Dr. Kim Nari understood what the Queen was asking. "You want us to help you fight the swarm?" "More than that," Queen Velthis replied. I want you to show us how to fight them. Our rigid military doctrines are failing. Our honor-based tactics are predictable. Our assumption that strength always wins is wrong. We need to learn to think the way you think. Park Jin studied the holographic display of the swarm ships. Can you show us the battle recordings? We need to understand how they fight before we can suggest how to beat them. For the next 2 hours, the Queen showed them everything. Battle, recordings, tactical analyses, weapons reports, and intelligence about the swarm's behavior. The humans watched in growing amazement as they saw the most advanced military in the galaxy being defeated again and again. The problem became clear. Quickly, the Velthorans fought with honor, discipline, and overwhelming force. Their tactics were sophisticated but predictable. They expected their enemies to fight the same way, following rules of engagement that made sense to military minds. The swarm followed no rules at all. They attacked in chaos, changed strategies without warning, and used tactics that seemed random, but were somehow effective. They turned the Velthorans' strength and predictability against them. You're fighting them the wrong way, Captain Hanwu said finally. Queen Velthus's chromatophores shifted to show offense. We are the greatest military force in the galaxy. Against enemies who fight like you do, Li Yuna added diplomatically. But the swarm doesn't fight like anyone else. They use chaos as a weapon. You can't beat chaos with order. Dr. Kim Nari was studying the intelligence reports. Look at this. Every time you use the same tactic twice, they adapt to it. But they don't seem to adapt as quickly to completely new approaches. The key is unpredictability. Park Jin had an idea. What if we don't try to beat them in space battles at all? What if we attack them in ways they don't expect? The humans spent the next hour explaining their ideas. Instead of fighting the swarm's military strength, they suggested attacking their weaknesses. The swarm was a hive mind that depended on coordination between ships. Disrupt that coordination and the entire fleet would become confused. Human art, music, and creative expression could be used as weapons, Dr. Kim Nari explained. Broadcast chaotic, creative patterns at their ships. Their hive mind won't know how to process truly random human creativity. Use psychological warfare, Captain Hanwu added. Humans are experts at fighting enemies who seem impossible to defeat. We've been doing it our entire history. Most importantly, Ambassador Li Yuna said, don't fight them alone. The swarm has probably attacked other species too. Instead of trying to protect your empire by yourselves, create an alliance. Combine the military strength of multiple species with the unpredictable tactics that humans can teach you. Queen Velthus listened to every word. The ideas were strange, unlike anything in Veltharan military doctrine, but they made sense in ways that traditional tactics did not. You want us to fight chaos with chaos, she asked. We want you to fight chaos with controlled unpredictability. Park Jin corrected. Human military doctrine is based on adapting to any situation and using whatever works, not following rigid rules. The Queen stood and walked to her star maps. If we do this, we would need to change everything about how we fight. Our entire military culture would have to adapt. That's what humans do best, Captain Hanwu said. We adapt. Queen Velthus made her decision. I will propose an alliance to the Veltharan High Council, but I want more than just military cooperation. I want a true partnership. Humans would help us learn new ways of thinking. We would share our technology and resources with your species. Dr. Kim Nari could hardly believe what she was hearing. You're offering humanity a place in the Veltharan Empire? Not in our empire, the Queen corrected. As our equals in a new kind of alliance, one based on cooperation instead of domination. 6 months later, Captain Hanwu stood on the bridge of a joint human Veltharan task force flagship. Around him, officers from 12 different species worked together, coordinated by translation devices based on Dr. Kim Nari's improved designs. The first battle against the Devourer swarm using human tactics had been a complete success. The swarm's hive mind had been utterly confused by the chaotic, unpredictable attacks that came from all directions at once, accompanied by broadcasts of human music and art. that disrupted their coordination. "Incoming transmission from the lead Valtheran ship," reported Park Jin from his position as communications chief. Queen Velthis appeared on the main screen. Her chromatophores showed colors that the humans had learned meant satisfaction and "Respect, Captain Han Wu," she said. "The swarm fleet is retreating from the system. Your species has taught us that strength comes not from rigid discipline, but from the ability to change and adapt. The Galactic Cooperation Council that we have created together is already being contacted by dozens of other species who want to join our alliance." Ambassador Li Yuna, now the first human representative to the council, smiled. Who would have thought that a malfunctioning translation device would lead to the greatest alliance in galactic history? Dr. Kim Nari laughed as she checked her latest translation equipment. Sometimes the best communication happens when words fail, and we have to show who we really are through our actions. The view screen showed dozens of ships from different species, all working together using tactics that no single species could have developed alone. The Devourer swarm was retreating, but more importantly, the galaxy had learned a new way to solve problems. Instead of one species ruling over others, they had created something unprecedented, a true partnership where every species contributed their unique strengths. And it had all started with a simple mistranslation that forced humanity to prove their worth not through words, but through the very human traits of adaptability, cooperation, and the ability to turn disasters into opportunities. "Captain." Han Wu looked at his mixed crew of humans and aliens working together, and realized that sometimes the best victories come not from winning fights, but from making friends out of enemies and creating something better than what existed before. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. When different species learned to work together instead of against each other, and humanity had found their place among the stars not as conquerors, but as the species that could bring others together and help them find new ways to solve impossible problems. The translation device that had nearly caused a war had instead created the foundation for the greatest peace the galaxy had ever known.